I trusted her with my life, but what I found buried changed everything. My name is Nathan Moore, and until a few months ago, I thought my life was relatively ordinary. I'm 33, a freelance graphic designer living in Denver, and I had a good relationship with my older brother, Jack. Jack was my best friend growing up. We shared secrets, games, and even heartbreaks. But nothing could have prepared me for the hell that would unfold after his sudden disappearance and what I discovered afterward. Jack had been married to a woman named Emily for 3 years. She was charming, intelligent, and had this calm presence that made everyone around her feel at ease. She was also a psychologist, precise, calculated, and observant. A little too observant, if I'm honest in hindsight. A week before Jack disappeared, he called me late at night. His voice was trembling. He said something felt off at home. He wouldn't go into detail, but kept repeating, "She's not who she says she is." At the time, I thought he might have been overthinking things. He'd been under stress losing his job, a minor car accident, insomnia. I told him to sleep on it and we'd meet the next day. We never did. 2 days later, Emily called me in a panic. She claimed Jack never came home from his evening run. His phone was still on the kitchen counter, and his wallet untouched. No note. No messages. Just gone. The police investigated, of course, but with no signs of foul play, it was labelled a voluntary disappearance. That didn't sit right with me. Emily broke down when the case went cold. She seemed genuinely heartbroken, cried through every conversation, barely left the house. I stayed in touch with her, not just because she was my sister-in-law, but because I felt responsible. Jack would have done the same for me. But about 3 months after Jack's disappearance, Emily vanished too. She left no trace. No forwarding address. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her apartment was left unlocked. Police said she probably left town to escape the trauma. That was the official version. But I found something. Something in Jack's garage while helping clean out his stuff for our parents. Tucked inside an old shoebox, beneath years of dusty receipts and fishing gear, was a small, red leather-bound diary. It didn't belong to Jack. It belonged to Emily. And the first line inside read, "He should never have found out what I did in Prague." I didn't breathe for a full minute. My hands were shaking as I flipped the pages. And that was the moment I realized Emily had been hiding something all along. Something monstrous. I couldn't stop reading. Page after page, Emily's handwriting unraveled a story I never expected. She wasn't the innocent, calm woman I thought she was. She was a woman haunted by secrets, dark, dangerous secrets. The diary entries began innocently enough, but as I flipped through, they quickly took a turn. Emily spoke of Jack's increasing anxiety, his suspicions, his sleepless nights. She was clearly manipulating him, playing the role of the perfect wife, yet all the while hiding something much darker beneath the surface. She mentioned Prague several times, but always in vague, cryptic terms. Something had happened there, a mistake, a betrayal. One entry caught my eye. He found the pictures today. I don't know what to do. It's only a matter of time before he connects the dots. The pictures. My heart raced. What pictures was she referring to? What had Jack found? I scoured the pages for more, but the further I went, the more questions arose. There were no specifics, no clear answers. Just a growing sense of dread as Emily's writing grew more frantic. It became clear that Emily wasn't just hiding something from Jack, she was hiding it from the world. The more I read, the more I realized Jack's disappearance wasn't a random act. It was a carefully orchestrated event. And Emily was at the center of it all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the words in my head. I needed answers. I needed to know what Emily had done in Prague, what Jack had found. There had to be more. I thought about confronting her, but deep down I knew she was dangerous. I didn't know how far she would go to protect her secrets. She had already taken Jack from me. She had already disappeared without a trace. If I went to her, I had no idea what she might do next, but I couldn't let it go. Not when my brother's life and possibly his death was at stake. The next day, I did something I swore I'd never do. I tracked down her old therapist. If anyone knew the truth about Emily, it was the person who had spent hours with her, listening to her darkest fears and confessions. I just hoped it wasn't too late. But I didn't realize how close I was to the edge of a much deeper, much darker truth. One that would make my search for Emily look like a child's game. I had no idea what I was about to uncover, but something told me whatever it was going to change everything. The therapist's office was tucked away in a quiet part of town, an unassuming place where the walls were lined with books on mental health and aging, a peaceful sanctuary for those seeking solace. I wasn't sure what I expected, but as I sat across from Dr. Henry Watts, something in the air felt heavy. He wasn't the type to pry or give out personal information, but he had worked with Emily for several years. Maybe, just maybe, he could shed some light on her strange behaviour. Dr. Watts was a man in his late 50s, with deep-set eyes and a kind, but guarded demeanour. When I told him I was Jack's brother and that I was trying to understand what had happened to Emily, he grew quiet. For a moment, I thought he might shut me down, refuse to say anything. But after a long pause, he let out a deep sigh and leaned back in his chair. I'm not supposed to share details about my clients, he began slowly, but in this case, I think you deserve to know something. My pulse quickened. This was a moment. The answers I had been searching for were within reach. Emily, he continued, has been struggling with something for a long time. She didn't start seeing me because of Jack, or even because of the marriage. She came to me years ago, before she even met your brother. Something happened to her in Prague, something that she's never been able to move past. I leaned forward, my heart racing. This was it. What happened? I asked, barely able to speak. Dr. Watts hesitated, as if weighing the decision in his mind. Finally he spoke, his voice low, almost a whisper. Emily was involved in something illegal. It wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was part of a larger web, one that stretched across borders, involving people who could be very dangerous. She's tried to bury it, tried to pretend it never happened, but that's not how trauma works. It follows you, and when she met Jack, she saw in him a way out, a way to start fresh, but when she married him, she couldn't escape the past. It came back, and it ruined everything. I stared at Dr. Watts, trying to piece together the fragments of his words. What was this larger web he was talking about? What had Emily been involved in? And how did Jack fit into all of this? Is that why she disappeared? I asked, barely able to hold it together. Did she kill Jack? Dr. Watts shook his head slowly. I don't believe she killed him, but I do believe she was involved in something that ultimately led to his disappearance. Whatever happened to Jack is tied to her past in Prague. I stood up abruptly, the room spinning as I tried to absorb the magnitude of what Dr. Watts was saying. Emily wasn't just a grieving wife, she was a woman with a dark history, a history that might have had deadly consequences for my brother. Dr. Watts handed me a file. This might help, he said quietly. There are records of Emily's therapy sessions, things she said about Prague. I can't promise it'll answer all your questions, but it's a start. I took the file, my mind racing. I didn't know what I was going to find, but there was one thing I was certain of. I was getting closer. Closer to the truth. And no matter where it led, I wasn't going to stop until I found Jack. Even if it meant diving deeper into a world I wasn't prepared for. Little did I know, the next piece of the puzzle would push me even further down a path I couldn't return from. I barely made it back to my car before I tore open the file. The thick folder was filled with scribbled notes, official documents, and what seemed to be transcripts of Emily's therapy sessions. My hands were trembling as I skimmed through the pages, trying to find anything that would explain the terrifying web Dr. Watts had alluded to. The more I read, the more I realize how deep Emily's involvement went. She wasn't just a victim of her past, she had been an active participant in something far darker than I could have imagined. There was a particular session that stood out to me. It was from just a few months before Jack's disappearance. Emily's words were written out verbatim, and they made my stomach twist with fear. I thought it was over, Emily had said. I thought I could leave all of it behind, but now they're back, they found me, they want the money, and if Jack finds out, I don't know what they'll do to him. The session continued, detailing Emily's paranoia, her growing fear of the people who she claimed were coming for her. She spoke of threats, of people watching her from the shadows, of the constant fear that her past would catch up to her. But there was no concrete explanation of who they were or why they were after her. Another session described a trip Emily had taken back to Prague, a place she had sworn to never return to. She had gone alone, against Dr. Watts' advice, but she claimed she needed closure. When she came back, she was more distant, more guarded than ever before. It was clear that something had happened on that trip, something that had made her even more dangerous than she'd been before. But the most chilling part of the file wasn't what Emily had said, it was what she had written. A letter addressed to someone named Anton. The letter was dated 2 months before Jack's disappearance. Anton, I'm sorry, I never wanted to involve you in this mess, but it's too late. I have no choice now. I've done things I can never undo. If Jack gets too close, I will have to tell him everything, and I won't be able to stop what happens next. I will do whatever it takes to protect myself, even if it means hurting him. I froze. The letter was a direct threat. Emily had been planning something. But what was it? And who was Anton? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure: Emily was hiding something far worse than I had imagined. She had lied about Jack's disappearance. She had manipulated everything, and now, with this letter in hand, I could feel the walls closing in on me. I called Dr. Watts again, desperate for more answers. He answered on the second ring. Nathan, you need to be careful, he warned, his voice urgent. You're getting too close to something you don't understand. Emily is not who you think she is. But it was too late. I was already too far gone. My brother's life had been ripped from me, and now everything I thought I knew about Emily was unraveling. I wasn't just chasing shadows anymore. I was chasing the truth, and the truth was darker than anything I could have imagined. In that moment, I realized that finding Emily was no longer about closure or justice. It was about survival. Because whoever was behind this, whoever Emily had dragged into her twisted past, was going to come for me next. I didn't sleep that night. The words from the letter kept echoing in my mind. If Jack gets too close, I will have to tell him everything. I felt the weight of that threat. Emily had been plotting something far more sinister than I had ever imagined. And now I was the one getting too close. I had to find Anton. Whoever he was, he held the key to understanding everything. I spent the entire next day scouring the city, using every connection I had to track him down. The name Anton didn't ring any bells at first, but as I dug deeper, I found a lead. A man with that name had been associated with a shady organisation that operated across Europe, mostly in the realm of illegal money laundering and arms trading. The more I learned, the more I realized that Emily wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She had been a willing participant in a much larger scheme. She had been involved with dangerous people who didn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who got in their way. The more I discovered, the more I understood how deep Emily had fallen into this world. I couldn't believe it at first. This was the woman who had smiled at family gatherings, who had played the part of the grieving widow. But beneath that mask, she had been someone else entirely, someone I couldn't recognize. I finally found Anton's location, or at least where he had been last seen. A dingy apartment building on the outskirts of town, far from the city centre. It was the kind of place where people came to hide, to disappear. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. If Anton was involved in all of this, he wouldn't be friendly, and he sure as hell wouldn't answer my questions without fight. But I had no choice. I needed to know what Emily had gotten herself into. I needed to understand why my brother was gone, and why Emily had left. When I arrived at the building, I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was it. The moment where everything would come to a head. I could feel the danger in the air. I wasn't just dealing with a missing person anymore. I was dealing with something far more dangerous. And I didn't know if I was ready for what I might find. I knocked on the door to apartment 307, my heart pounding in my chest. No one answered. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. I was about to turn away when I heard a noise from inside. It was faint at first, but then louder footsteps approaching the door. The door creaked open, and there he was. Anton. He was taller than I expected, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to scan me the moment the door opened. His expression was blank, but I could see the tension in his posture. He knew who I was. And more importantly, he knew why I was here. "You're looking for answers," Anton said, his voice low and measured. I nodded, barely able to breathe. He stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. Then come in, but understand this, once you cross the threshold, there's no going back. I hesitated for a moment. The weight of his words sank in. This was it. The point of no return. Once I entered, everything would change. I'd be stepping into a world that had already claimed my brother's life and maybe even my own. But I didn't have a choice. I stepped inside. Anton led me through the dimly lit apartment, where old furniture sat gathering dust and the air was thick with the scent of stale cigarettes. It wasn't the place I imagined someone involved in criminal activities would live, but it felt like a place for secrets that had been buried for far too long. As I sat down across from him, he didn't waste any time. "You think Emily is the victim in all this," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "But she's not. She's a player in a much bigger game. And now, because of your little search, you've become part of it too." I stared at him, my mind racing. "What game? What the hell are you talking about?" Anton smirked, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "The game of power, control, and survival. Emily didn't just come to me for help, she came for something else, something that could destroy lives, your brother's life, for starters, and now that you're here, it's only a matter of time before the rest of us are in danger." My heart sank. What did Emily do? What happened to Jack? Anton's smirk faded. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You'll find out soon enough, but know this, you're too late. The people who were after Emily are already after you." The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The people who had taken Jack, the people Emily had been hiding from, they were coming for me now. I was already in too deep. There was no turning back. And in the next moments, everything I thought I knew about my brother's disappearance would come crashing down. The truth was darker than I could have ever imagined, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. But I had no choice. I was already in the game. I don't know how long I sat there in Anton's apartment, the weight of his words sinking in. His words had cracked open a door to something monstrous. The cold, calculating side of Emily, the woman I thought I knew, had now become undeniable. The sense of danger was palpable. They were after me now. But for what? What had Emily dragged me into? Anton leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching me like a predator sizing up its prey. The silence between us stretched out, thick and suffocating, until finally he broke it. "You're not going to like this, Nathan," he said, his voice steady. "But you need to understand something. Emily didn't just stumble into this world of crime. She was born into it. Her family has been involved in organised crime for years. She's not just an innocent therapist. You've seen the diary, right? That was the tip of the iceberg. She's been using you and Jack to hide her tracks, to protect herself from the people who wanted her dead." My stomach churned. Her family? I thought she was a psychologist, a normal person. She was normal, right? Anton's laugh was dark, almost mocking. Normal? Emily never had the luxury of being normal. From the moment she was born, her family tied her into something bigger. They were involved in illegal operations, money laundering, arms deals, you name it. But Emily had a choice. She could either continue with the family business or try to escape. She chose the latter, but she was always going to be pulled back in, and your brother, he was just another pawn in her plan. He didn't even realize it. I stood up, pacing now, my mind racing. So you're telling me she was using Jack? That's why he disappeared? Because she got too close to something, and I'm here. What? Just another piece in her game? Anton's face hardened. Exactly, but don't think for a second that Emily is some helpless victim in all of this. She made her choice, and so did Jack. When Jack started digging too deep into her past, it wasn't just her family that was at risk, it was the entire network she was trying to escape. She thought she could control the situation, that she could cover her tracks, but someone found out, and they weren't going to let her get away. The realization hit me like a lightning bolt. I had been so focused on finding Jack and bringing Emily to justice, but I hadn't fully grasped the scope of what was really at play. This wasn't just a family tragedy, it was part of a much larger criminal operation, one that stretched across borders and had no mercy for anyone who got in its way. But the more I thought about it, the more questions arose. If Emily was this dangerous, why hadn't she killed me already? I had been getting too close to the truth, poking around where I shouldn't be. She could have silenced me easily. I looked at Anton, a new thought forming in my mind. So why haven't you killed me yet? You know everything, right? If I'm in your way, why not just finish the job? He stared at me for a moment, weighing his words. You think you're safe just because you found me. You're not, but killing you would only complicate things. For now, you're more useful to me alive than dead. Emma's not the only one who has enemies, and the ones after her. They are off duty now. They're watching every move you make. If you don't want to end up like Jack, I suggest you start listening. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't just about uncovering a missing person. It was a battle for survival. And the longer I stayed in this twisted game, the more I realized how deep I had gotten and how little I understood about what was truly happening. Anton stood up abruptly. We need to move. Nathan, they're already here. And if you don't want to be the next person to vanish, you need to listen closely. He motioned for me to follow him. I had no choice but to do as he said. My life, Jack's life, everything I had known was rapidly slipping away, and I was running out of time to figure out who was pulling the strings. As we exited the building, I noticed the first sign that I wasn't just being paranoid. A black van was parked across the street, its windows tinted dark enough to obscure the inside. The driver was watching me, but the moment I caught his gaze, he turned his head sharply and ducked down. Anton's grip on my arm tightened. They're here. The game has changed, and if you want to stay alive, you need to do exactly as I say. I nodded, panic rising in my chest. I had no idea who I could trust anymore. But one thing was clear. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. I had no idea what the next few hours would bring, but I knew this whoever was behind all of this, whoever Emily had been running from, was closing in. And I was now a part of it. The cold, stifling air outside Anton's building wrapped around me like a vice. The weight of the situation settled deeper into my bones, a crushing reality that I couldn't escape. Anton wasn't leading me to safety, he was pushing me further into the heart of the storm. The van that had been parked across the street followed us, keeping a safe distance but staying close enough to keep us under surveillance. It was like we were being headed toward a confrontation that I wasn't prepared for. Anton walked briskly, his pace unrelenting. His eyes darted around, as if he were always aware of every movement in the shadows. They won't stop looking for us, not until they find Emily, he muttered under his breath. I had no idea who they were, but the more Anton spoke, the more I realized that Emily was not just a criminal, she was a key player in something far larger than I could comprehend. And as much as I hated to admit it, the truth was clearer now. She wasn't just hiding from her past, she was fighting for her life. Who are they, Anton? Who's coming after us? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and frustration. He glanced over at me, his face set in stone. They're the same people who have been after Emily for years, people from her past to her family's enemies, and the people she's betrayed. They don't just let things go. They'll do whatever it takes to finish what they started. I was growing more confused by the second. Betrayed by her family? What had Emily gotten herself into? She wasn't just running from people anymore, she was part of a war. And somehow, I had been dragged into it. We reached the back alley behind a small cafe, and Anton turned sharply, pulling me into the narrow passage. We're safe here, for now, he said, his eyes scanning the air. The alley was dark and abandoned, the kind of place where things were meant to stay hidden. Safe from who? I asked, my voice rising. I could feel the panic creeping in again, my breath quickening. How much danger are we really in? Anton shot me a look, his expression unreadable. You think it's over? No, Nathan, it's just beginning. We crouched behind a dumpster as the van passed, its headlights cutting through the dark, searching for us. My mind raced. If Emily had been involved in all this, if she had dragged me into this war between dangerous criminals, what did that make me? Just another pawn in a game I didn't understand. Anton pulled out his phone and made a quick call. He spoke in a low, urgent tone. We need to move fast, they're onto us. I watched him carefully. Who was he calling? Was he working with Emily's enemies, or was he just trying to survive, like me? I had no way of knowing for sure. He had already proved he wasn't a trustworthy ally, but at this point, he was my only option. Suddenly, the phone call ended, and Anton looked at me with a grim expression. There's only one place left to go, and if we don't get there before they do, we're finished. What place? Who's waiting for us? I asked. Anton didn't answer it immediately. Instead, he looked up at the alley entrance, his eyes narrowing. You'll find out soon enough. I didn't have a choice. My heart was pounding, my mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. Whoever Emily had betrayed, whoever was after us, it was all coming to her head now. And I was stuck in the middle of it. We moved quickly through the dark streets, staying low, staying quiet. Every step felt like it could be my last. The van was still out there, searching for us. And as we reached the outskirts of the city, Anton's phone buzzed. He read the message quickly, then pocketed the device. They found her, Anton said, his voice cold. They've got Emily. A cold chill ran down my spine. I couldn't process the words. What did that mean? Who had her? What were they going to do to her? We're running out of time, Nathan. If we don't act now, they'll finish what they started with Jack, and you'll never get the answers you're looking for. I didn't even know if I could trust Anton, but one thing was certain, Emily wasn't just an innocent woman caught in a dangerous game. She was a player, and now, so was I. As we reached a dilapidated warehouse on the edge of town, the enormity of the situation began to sink in. I wasn't just searching for a missing person anymore. I wasn't just trying to find my brother's killer. I was fighting for my life. I had one choice. Follow Anton into the unknown and maybe get the answers I'd been searching for. Or turn back, let everything unravel, and risk losing Emily, Jack, and myself to the darkness that surrounded us all. Anton opened the door to the warehouse. It's inside, now. I stepped in, not knowing what to expect, but whatever was coming, I knew one thing. It would be the final chapter in a story I never asked to be a part of. And I had no idea if I would make it out alive.